The following is a Papi Chulo Radio original program. The views and opinions expressed in the commentaries and/or interviews in the following program are solely those of the individuals and are not views of Papi Chulo Radio, its parent, affiliate, or subsidiary companies.
Welcome to the Cordyceps Chronicles, a PapiChuloRadio.com original series. Papi Chulo Radio, pop culture on demand. Today is Monday, February 27th, 2023, and I'm your host, Priscilla Obregon. During this podcast, we'll be having an in-depth discussion on HBO's The Last of Us. Please welcome my co-host, Jeffrey Aruz.
Hey, listeners. Welcome back. Do-do-do-do-do-do.
Fatality.
Oh, well, it was Take On Me.
Oh, damn.
It's fine.
That totally went over my head.
Mortal Kombat! There you go.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So let's jump into our discussion of Season 1, Episode 7, which is titled Left Behind and debuted February 26, 2023 on HBO. Here's the official synopsis of the episode. As Joel fights to survive, Ellie looks back on the night that changed everything. So really vague. So let's jump into the details. So we start the episode and we find that Joel and Ellie camping out in the garage of an abandoned house in the suburbs. Ellie does her best to stop Joel's bleeding, and while doing so, Joel tells her to leave him, then grabs her and says she needs to go north to Tommy. Ellie puts Joel's jacket on him and leaves the house as a tear falls from Joel's eye. But then we cut to a flashback of Ellie in the Boston quarantine zone wanting laps in gym as she listens to Pearl Jam's All or None on her Walkman cassette player. Bethany, a girl in class, rips off Ellie's headphones, telling her to pick up the pace. But Ellie responds that she doesn't want to fight about it. But the girl states that Ellie doesn't fight, her friend does, and her friend isn't there anymore. Yet Ellie proves the girl wrong, punching her right in the face. This lands Ellie, now with a black eye, into the office of Captain Kwong, who says that Ellie isn't usually well-behaved. These last few weeks have been actually worse. Kwong says that Bethany is in the infirmary with 15 stitches. When Ellie replies, good, she asks Kwong to just throw her in the hole. But Kwong says the hole doesn't work, so he's going to try something new. He's going to tell her the truth. Kwong says Ellie is smart, but she has 2 paths ahead. On her first path, she keeps acting like a grunt. She'll live the life of a grunt. She'll do shit jobs, eat shit food, and take shit orders, probably from Bethany, for the rest of her life. But on the other path, Ellie could swallow her pride, follow the rules, and become an officer. There are benefits to this path. Good food, your own room, and you get to tell the Bethanies of the world to shove it. Ellie asks why he cares, and Kwong replies that no matter what anyone thinks, if they go down, the whole QZ goes down. Kwong says there could be a leader in Ellie and asks her which path, to which Ellie replies, the latter path. Ellie asks for her Walkman back, and Kwong obliges. So I'm going to pause here and ask, what did you think of this scene?
Okay. So, first of all, very worried for Joel. Just because Ellie is a teeny tiny human, and he is a full-sized human. So, like, the idea of her dragging him in the snow, like, just everything about it just gets me worried for him, and also worried for her. So, yeah, I was worried from the beginning about everything. Well, I should say I was worried from the end of the previous episode about everything. Now, as far as Bethany, never have I felt so satisfied since Stranger Things Season 4 to see a little bitch get her ass beat. Have you seen Stranger Things Season 4?
Yes, I have. I finally finished it.
Oh, okay. It was immensely satisfying when the blonde girl, right?
Is she blonde? She was like, she
Was she
just
blonde?
looked like, she had brown hair.
Well, she was a bitch, nonetheless. But it doesn't matter the hair color. So not since then have I felt as satisfied to see a little bitch get punched the fuck out. And so that was immensely satisfying. The frank conversation that was had was like probably the realest thing that anyone had ever said to Ellie, and I think had nothing else in the episode happened the way that it happened, I think that would have been her wake-up call, to be quite honest. But because stuff happened, um, yeah, that was not the wake-up call that she needed. She got a different wake-up call. But I thought the setup was really interesting. If I'm not remembering, I feel like I read that this entire episode is based off of like an expansion pack from the game. So that idea is kind of interesting, because, as showrunners, knowing that this exists, it's like, where are we going to put this? And of course, they're going to put it at a moment in which Ellie is at her most vulnerable because it shares with us, the viewers, important insight into the character. So from the beginning, I was just really excited to get this information. Something that I've sort of been saying ever since the first episode is, I want more information about these characters. Like, clearly we are getting to know them at a time when the world is shit. And so getting as much information that we can get about their life before meeting each other, and when I'm saying meeting each other, I mean specifically Joel and Ellie, is incredibly vital to understand not only who they are as a people, or as a person, but also so that we can understand what motivates them and so that we can understand the true beauty of whatever character development they're going to get throughout this series' run. We only have 2 episodes left. I can't even believe I'm saying that, but 2 episodes left for the season. And so for me, this was incredibly vital information, and the little tidbits that we started to get from the beginning about how Ellie was behaving at the Fedra Academy, for lack of a better word, was really interesting. So I completely enjoyed it, even though it was a little tough to watch because the last thing that we want to see from any character that we're enjoying is them sort of being bullied and having a really tough time.
So I completely agree with you on the whole, like, just imagining how Joel got to the house. Because they were in, like, the middle of nowhere. And she was, like, dragging him, like, through the town into a house, like, to the basement part of it. I'm just kind of like, how? You are tiny. Did you use the horse? Did you, like, somehow sling him on there, even though he's, like, 100 pounds heavier than you are? What the hell? Like, just, I have to, like, stop thinking about it like realistically and just think like it's survival mode. She probably had adrenaline and she like just sucked it up and did what she had to do. So when she's there and she sees the bleeding and she winces, like I wince too. Like that was really good. Like I don't know, like realistic work, like just in terms of like graphics and stuff like that, and the wound and how like it kind of like pulses out blood. Like it looks like a stab wound. Like since I've seen a couple in the ER and like it looks realistic. It looks good. And when he pushes her and he's like, "Go," and like the little tear falls down his cheek, I was like, "No, Joel, you're giving up on yourself. Like you're a survivor. You fought for so much, and you're just kind of like letting her go, letting her live." And giving up on the quest. And a part of me, like, I know how it ends, but a part of me in this scene was just heartbroken for Joel. I was like, you've got to get up, man. You just have to. And when it just flashes back, like a part of me was like, no, this is gonna be a flashback episode. I want to see what happens with Ellie and Joel. But this, like I completely agree with you. We need to know more about Ellie. And I hadn't played this expansion pack. I just played like the game itself. So all of this was new information to me. So like we started off with Pearl Jam's All or None, and right away I Googled it and was like, when did Pearl Jam's All or None come out? Did it come out in the 80s? Am I gonna have to like prepare for trouble? And it came out in 2002. So for now, everything's gonna be fine in the QZ. And that girl, Bethany, oh, I was so pissed at her. But like then I think about it rationally, and I think about it. This girl is probably like Kwong's pet that like wants to like make it up the ranks, wants to be an officer. And of course she's gonna want like the class to like do well. And you have like this person who's like getting in the way of the class and like running like shit and not actually like doing the drills that you're supposed to. Of course you're gonna be like, hey, like keep up. You're gonna make the rest of the class look bad. So a part of me like empathizes with her. Like I don't feel as angry with her as I did with the Stranger Things girl. Oh god, I hated that girl. That girl was just mean for mean's sake. But like Bethany, I feel like you have to give Ellie leeway because of course like she's depressed and she's like basically what's akin to the orphanarium, like with no family, no friends anymore. And like her only friend is apparently like isn't here anymore in quotations. So like she's depressed. You have to give her some leeway. But of course, like you're a kid, you're never gonna give anyone leeway. You're just gonna be like, keep up or I'm gonna make you keep up. So like I can see where both of them are coming from. I don't hate her as much as like you do. But and obviously she got her comeuppance considering she's getting 15 stitches. Jeez, Ellie must have like bit her or something. Jesus. That was insane. But I also agree with you with like Kwong being like real with her and had what happened later in the episode not happened, like she probably would have like grown up to be an officer and then it would have been like this whole like Romeo and Juliet thing with like a firefly and an officer. Like that would have been like interesting. But like it's I like the fact that they took Kwong, who could be like really mean and put her in a hole and like not give a shit about her because he has to deal with like a bunch of kids. So like it's grinding on you. But instead he treats her like a little adult and he talks like to like straight to her face and tells her the truth. The hard hitting truth that like if she keeps acting up, she's going to live the life of a grunt. But if you follow the rules, you might become an officer and there's perks to it. So like I think Ellie respected that. I also thought that it was such a kid thing to do to be like, "Can I have my Walkman back?" It's like, yes, you acted like a brat. You messed someone up, and you still ask for more. But I respected Kwong for giving her the Walkman back. That was that was a baller move. So later that night, Ellie's in her room reading Savage Starlight comics as it rains and looks over the side of the room to see an empty bed. Hours after lights out, someone crawls into Ellie's room while she sleeps. The person put her hand over Ellie's mouth and Ellie kicks the person off, pulling her switchblade on her. Ellie discovers it's Riley, played by Storm Reid, her former roommate, the friend who fights, and Ellie asks where she's been. Ellie says she thought Riley was dead, as she's been gone for 3 weeks. Riley says she's fine, she just ran away for a bit, to which Ellie replies that Riley should have told her best friend about it. Riley admits that she joined the Fireflies, and when Ellie doesn't believe her, Riley shows her gun. Riley says she'll tell Ellie everything, but first Ellie has to promise she'll come with Riley for a few hours and have the best night of her life. Even though Ellie says no at first, they both know she'll eventually say yes. Ellie tells Riley to turn around while she changes, with Riley commenting that Ellie is always so weird about that as Ellie changes. Riley eyes Ellie's cassettes, which include one from Aha, a small reference to The Last of Us Part 2. Riley says that where they're going to is secret and that Ellie should trust her with her life. The two crawl out the window and make their way for a 2 a.m. adventure. The pair climbs down the streets ignoring patrols and Riley tells Ellie that after the Bethany bout, she should pick her fights carefully. They climb through a window and up 7 floors and find a dead body. Riley says the body wasn't there yesterday, and it looks like a man mixed pills with booze from before the outbreak. Ellie grabs the bottle right before the man falls through the rotting floor, scaring the two before making them laugh. They both share drinks from the bottle. Remember in episode 4 when Ellie tried Joel's flask and said it was still gross? And Ellie asks for the first time, it asks if it was the first time Riley had seen a dead body. Riley says no, her parents. Ellie asks if she can hold Riley's gun, and after Ellie mocks her and recites the Firefly's rules, she hands it over as Ellie notes how surprisingly heavy it is. So I'm going to pause here and say, what did you think about the introduction of Riley?
I enjoyed her, but I like Storm Reed, so I was really excited to see her. She keeps on making that HBO money, so props to her. Yes, and I was like, oh, I hope she's not as sad as she is on the other show, and she wasn't for the most part until later. But yeah, it was great to see her. I liked her personality. I could immediately see and understand why they are friends, best friends, as they called each other from the beginning. So she was spectacular. Everything else that we got with her was really interesting. Like their dynamic was really good. The fact that we had gotten a little bit of sort of like a taste as to her being a protector of Ellie was really nice. Wait, how far deep did we get into it? I just want to make sure I don't go too far deep.
We got up to the point where the dead body goes down
Okay,
and
okay, okay, okay. Yes,
she
yes,
holds
yes.
the gun.
Okay. So seeing her be her protector was really nice, and sort of like getting that vibe when they were together. Their dynamic was it was really good. Like I really really enjoyed their dynamic. I thought they were like really sweet and wonderful with each other. I also loved seeing them almost get caught and then, being really stealth and covert, although in a really loud kind of way because they're just talking loudly as they're like, traipsing on roofs and that kind of thing. When they get to the moment in which they find the dead body, what a sad reminder of the times because they understand, for the most part, that he committed suicide. He mixed pills and liquor together and that sort of thing. I loved the line of, this isn't like moonshine that's made today. This is from before. So that was kind of neat. Their understanding of alcohol and that sort of thing. And when the body fell, like that was an intense little moment. Like I was worried for both of their lives, and I don't really understand why because this is a flashback, and we know exactly, sort of, where this flashback is going. So the fact that once again the writers and the actors just give us this give us this intense feeling of foreboding, even though we really know, for the most part, kind of sort of where it's going. I got to give them props for that because, I was still worried for both of them.
Like you touched on most of the things that I wanted to say. I'm just gonna say I've never seen Storm Reid in anything before, and I saw her and immediately
Wait,
thought of her.
wait. You've never seen Euphoria?
Nope, never seen Euphoria.
What?
Yeah, another one of like the HBO shows that I'm like, I'll get to it at some point, eventually.
Okay. It's good. I'm genuinely shocked. Oh, so you've never seen her before, period.
No, I've never seen it before. But
Oh,
like
okay.
when people were like, Storm Reid's playing Riley, I'm like, okay, I have no idea who she is, but apparently I'm supposed to be hyped for this, so I'm hoping she's good. And she is. She matched up my expectations of what I expected, like the first death or like the first like true relationship that Ellie had. Like I was expecting someone who would immediately make you like empathize with her at best or like love her at most. And I saw that. And I'm going to say something that like might be a little bit controversial about this scene, but there's a certain mystique that like being friends with a girl has where like people are like, are you guys being like romantic with each other? Are you just being like pals with each other? Like where it kind of like runs a murky like gray line sometimes like in TV, and I felt like they pulled it off like really well, especially like when Ellie like starts to change and tells her to turn around. It just reminds me of the fact that like the actress herself, like Bella Ramsey, to play Ellie, she puts on like a binder, which makes me think like automatic. It gave me like, is this LGBT? Like, are you hiding because like you don't want to show off like your chest, like you don't want to like, or you don't want to like blend the lines of like sexuality like that way, or are you hiding because you just don't want to change and you're shy in front of another girl? Like it could be a lot of things. Like it just reminds me of like Sofia Coppola movies and things like that. Just how like murky the dynamic can be. And I really liked that. Like you can't say for sure whether or not like they're a straight like two girls like relationship, or whether there's like a little bit of like LGBT in there. And it's interesting. Obviously like that, and that gets answered later on in the episode. But as of now, like they're slowly like pacing you in through this, and it's interesting. I also wanted to say the dead body, completely agree with you. It's sad that like right away, like instead of being like, whoa, like they had pills and they had like drinks and he died, like automatically both of them knew like he did this on purpose. Like he didn't just party and like crash or something like that and die there. Like he literally like wanted to kill himself. And when the body just falls to the ground, I jumped. I was like, is this a jump scare? Why am I so scared? Like these kids are gonna be all right. Like we have to see the rest of this episode play out. Like it completely defied logic why I was scared. But it just goes to show how great these two actresses are, that they make us give a shit about them. And I love the fact that like I mentioned it during the walkthrough of this scene, but they shared drinks from the bottle, and Ellie had already tried like real liquor, and she said it was still gross. So it just goes to show like little things like that in writing, where they remember she's tried liquor before, she's tried real liquor before, not moonshine. That charms me to a show. That makes me think that the writers actually give a shit about what they're writing about, that they're keeping an attention to detail. And I like that. So, continuing on, Ellie asks what happened. Did she start dating some Firefly dude and decide to become a terrorist? Riley jokingly says, yup, but then says that one night Ellie was in a hole, so Riley snuck out. While Riley was sneaking around, a woman in her 40s or 50s, whatever, she was old, and that hurts the ticker over here, came up to her and said she was impressed with her sneaking around. And after Riley told the woman her negative opinion of Fedra, the woman said if she wanted in, she's in. She said yes, and now she's a Firefly. Ellie says she doesn't know if Riley's dislike of Fedra is so simple, and begins reciting Kwang's line about how Fedra holds everything together. Riley says that as much as she loves arguing, they're on a mission, and as they jump from rooftop to rooftop in the QZ heading to their destination. They take a break, and Ellie notices that there are more lights. Riley says that there are more people, which means more apartments. Ellie says that means Fedra isn't entirely bad. Riley talks about how Fedra are fascist dickbags, and Ellie replies by asking if the Fireflies still use bombs. Riley says not when civilians are around, which Ellie calls propaganda bullshit. Riley states, one, it's okay to not know everything. Ellie says agree to disagree. And two, they're here. Riley has brought Ellie to an abandoned mall, and Ellie says Riley is out of her mind, that they sealed off the mall because it was full of infected. Riley slyly replies that if it's supposed to be sealed off, why isn't it sealed off? I'm gonna pause here because I feel like this was like the filler portion of the episode, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it.
The mall was really cool. Like
We
you.
haven't gone to the mall yet, so
Oh,
it's
okay. Oh, sorry. Oh, no. We're outside talking about that the lights are turned on. Right.
yeah, we're on
Okay.
Fedra and like fireflies.
Okay. So for me, finding out that Riley was a Firefly now was interesting because I was like, as we're watching this, like, what is the end of this flashback going to be? Like, are we going to see Marlene again? Are we going to see how Ellie connects with the Fireflies and that sort of thing? Like, I thought we were going to get a nice little moment, and so that's what I was hoping for as we kept on getting all of this information about the Fireflies and how Riley was involved with them. It was very exposition-y, but it was, I think, information that we should have known, and it made sort of sense in my mind based off of what we know of where Ellie was at the start of the series. Like, I was making those connections every time Riley kept on mentioning that she became a Firefly and how, she feels that her decision was justified based off of the fact that she didn't agree with how Fredra was treating the people, how there are other, QZs that toppled Fedra and that sort of thing, and how everyone sort of needs their rights and should be in charge of their life, as she said, sort of like how it used to be. So yes, it was a little filler-ish maybe, but I really enjoyed the smaller conversations that were being had about how things were being run. I had to sort of keep on reminding myself that Ellie is 14, and as we found out in this episode, that Riley is 17. So we're getting these really incredibly mature conversations from these kids that, their only life has been the quarantine zone.
I feel like they both come from like opposite planes of the spectrum where like Riley's older, so she remembers a time when she had family. She remembers a time when things were different, when the Federal probably was like barely shaping up to like take over. So she remembers rights. She remembers have a more plentiful time. And the fact that like they're constantly starving and that they have like what she calls fascist dickbags like Fedra like kind of lording it over them. Like of course she's gonna like want to join like the Fireflies. Like it sounds like a much better deal to have someone be like, well, couldn't everyone live in plenty again? Like it's the whole like you live in a communist nation but you hear about like the democracy and like its riches and you're like, oh my god, this sounds so much brilliant. Why would I ever want to be in like a communist nation? Like it's that sort of like propaganda thing going around. And I remember like them bouncing around like the rooftops and me just being like, oh no, you're gonna fall. What the hell's wrong with you people? But like I get that like because it's like the apocalypse, like forms of travel are different. But I just flash back to like, you guys aren't Spider-Man. What if you slip? What if you fall? What the hell are you gonna do then? Like, oh god, I was such like a worried mom. But yeah, I thought it was a fillery portion of it. Like a part of me was just kind of like, get to the good stuff. Like tell me more. Like the only thing I found that was like a really meaty part of it was when Ellie asked, like, did you start dating some Firefly dude and decide to become a terrorist? Like it was joking, but a part of me is like, why would you care? And unless like you feel more for her than like you're letting on. Like I don't know. Like that automatically that started like putting my feelers out like, I don't know. But I appreciated the little hints that they're giving that like this is probably going to be more. So, continuing on, Ellie and Riley crawl down a hole, and Riley explains that when Fedra hooked up the new apartments with electricity, the mall was connected too. Riley tells Ellie to go out the door, go right, and head out another door, and to let her know when she's there. When she arrives, Riley hits the light, and Ellie gets to watch an entire abandoned mall come to light. For once, Ellie is silent, in awe of the beginning of the best night of her life. Riley assures Ellie that no one else can see the lights outside, it's just the two of them. But Ellie hasn't seen anything yet, and tonight Riley will show Ellie the four wonders of the mall. As Take On Me plays on the soundtrack, first Riley shows Ellie an escalator for the first time. Ellie is shocked by the electric stairs, and she goofs around, climbing up and down with joy. Ellie asks if this is one of the wonders, and Riley says, sure, there can be 5. While they walk the mall, Riley points out that it isn't exactly packed with infected. Ellie asks why some of the stores are still full and others aren't. Riley says her mom told her that when the outbreak happened, some of the stores were looted and others weren't, that people took what they needed or wanted. Ellie notes that the Foot Locker is emptied out, but the body shop remains packed with supplies. They then look at a nearby Victoria's Secret shop where Riley can't believe people ever wanted things like that. Riley then laughs and says that she was trying to imagine Ellie wearing something like that. As Riley walks off, Ellie takes a closer look at herself in the reflection. So I'm going to pause and say, now you can talk about the introduction to the mall. What did you think?
The mall, first of all, was gorgeous, even in its sort of post-apocalyptic, decrepit nature. It kind of reminded me of, if you're trolling through the internet, you'll end up finding photos or posts that like show abandoned theme parks or carnivals or local amusement locations. And like it's incredibly fascinating and eerie to watch those images or to look at them because it's like, like these once vibrant locales, have become abandoned and overrun with vegetation or infested with, animals and that sort of thing, and you can see things sort of like rotting and breaking down and that kind of stuff. And there's just like a weird sort of beauty in that, you know, the amusement park is kind of frozen in time, but not because it's aging. And so I don't know. It's like a weird thing to look at, but they're always so fascinating to see whenever I like run into a post that shows something like that. So basically, we got that in live action with this mall. I did read a little bit of information, like BTS, that this is a mall in Canada that was going to be demolished soon, so they were able to you know, basically do whatever the hell they wanted to in that mall. And we got to see a lot of that in the episode. I don't know if all the stores were the exact same thing. I'm sure they probably had to do or to update it to include some like time sensitive stores and that kind of stuff. But it was fascinating. All of it was really, really interesting. When I heard Take On Me, see, I didn't know like when the other song came out, the one that aired that was played before this, but I know Take On Me is an 80s track, and I was like, this is like the happiest, peppiest 80s track, but we know what the 80s mean. And so I was like, oh no, something's gonna happen. Not right now, clearly, because I think this was like what, maybe barely 20-ish, 25 maybe minutes into the episode, but I knew shit was gonna pop at a certain point. I loved Ellie's fascination with the magic of the escalator. Like it was beautiful. We have to keep on remembering that these are kids that grew up in a time when the modern comforts of what we would consider to be the modern world were not there for them, and so seeing like both of them be kind of mesmerized at the almost like the banal, just like the banal things that we like overlook, and just the ridiculousness of fashions and that sort of thing was incredibly fascinating. Because they're thinking of things in an incredibly practical kind of way. In the post-apocalypse, I mean, you're not going to need sexy underwear I mean, that's not like the number one thing to think about for one's survival. As well as, you're not going to need fancy soaps, and you're not gonna be able to experience stairs that move on their own. So all of it was incredibly fascinating. And if I'm going to be fully honest, like I was waiting for an infected to pop out at any moment.
You heard the 80s sound, like right away you were just kind of like, fuck.
Yes,
I
100%. Well, I love 80s music. Like I have an entire 80s playlist that I love to jam out to on occasion. I feel like the 80s is kind of like its own era when it comes to music. So yeah, I immediately recognized Take on Me, and I was like, oh, that's 80s.
I completely agree with like you saying like the wonder at the banalities of like modernity with like her being like I don't know, having her own Mary Poppins moment with the escalator, like going down it, like sliding on the side, like letting it like hold her while she goes down like a pro, like she's dancing on it or something. It was like its own like little mini singing in the rain moment. Like, and I was like, did the actress actually slip when she falls down there, or like was that choreographed, or like did she actually slip and like Storm Reed just took it in stride and was like, "Hey, like, are you okay?" Like, whatever it was, like that was just a magical moment. I loved it. Like, it just shows like how miraculous like things that we take for granted are, like the electric stairs. Like, that was great. And I don't know about you, since like you're in another state, but here in Texas, like I've been to malls like the Galleria and like in San Antonio, like the mall there, the Riverwalk Mall, and they all kind of look the same because like you tell me that this is a Canadian mall that was about to be demolished, and I'm like, they used the same like design, the same sort of like two-story, like with a big hallway down the middle and like the lights and the roof like arching, like it's the same thing. So like I love the fact that they did that because like it makes you feel like this could be you, this could be your town, this could be what happens to your place. And I also love the fact that like they Riley kind of rationalized that if this were to happen, if the fungi apocalypse were to happen, if the zombie apocalypse were to happen, people would go for what they want or aspirational things. Like, of course you're going to go and get like Jordans and you're going to get like shoes because you think like I'm going to need to run and I'm going to need to outpace these people. You're not going to go for the frou-frou like loofahs at the body shop and like creams and stuff like that. You're not going to go for lingerie. Like, it makes no sense. Like, maybe like clean underwear, but like not stuff for like aesthetic purposes. Like, you're going to go for stuff that's rational. So I was like, wow, like this is that was interesting. Like, I loved that portion. And again, another hint to like the fact that these two are gonna end up like doing something together. Like when she's like, I was trying to imagine you in lingerie, and I just laughed. And Ellie like stops and like primps herself in the mirror before going off to
Mm-hmm.
like that. I was like, wow, another big hint as to
Yeah.
what's gonna happen.
That to me was like the biggest moment for me, like where I was like, okay, so this is where that's headed, because it was the more obvious moment, and I mean clearly she was checking herself out, for reasons. So I was like, okay, so I know where that's going. Can I also just add on really quick before we move on? There was something about the kitschy neon splendor of the lights of the mall that I really enjoyed. It also made it feel very old school. I know that this is supposed to be a mall that existed in like 2003. There are some malls that maybe haven't been updated, but it gave like a very Stranger Things like 80s vibe to it, like all of like the neon that was used. But there was something just gorgeous about it, like the way that it was shot and the specific colors that were used. It was something kind of almost magical about it. And if we are supposed to like, if that was supposed to like evoke what Ellie was feeling because it was her first time in the mall and it was her first time experiencing all of that. I felt that too with just sort of like the gorgeous neon splendor that we got.
Completely agree. I saw that and was like, this is an old mall. Like I remember this from trolling around my mall in the 90s. Like this is the mall of millennials. This is what we experienced in the 90s and in the 2000s. So like they captured the era really well with just like the lights and the shops they chose to put in the mall. Like it was really good. It was derelict chic. So further down, Riley says Ellie has to close her eyes and asks Ellie if she trusts her. Ellie gives Riley her hand and a slight smile appears on Ellie's face as she's guided through the mall. Riley then tells Ellie to open her eyes, presenting her with a working carousel. Riley turns it on and the two get on as a simple instrumental version of Take On Me plays through the carousel. They both get on horses and Riley catches Ellie looking at her. The two laugh and pass the bottle of alcohol between each other again. It's a beautiful moment between the two of them, both able to be kids again for just a minute. And then the carousel unexpectedly stops. Ellie asks if Riley really left because she thought she could liberate this place, and Riley gets frustrated by Ellie's lack of optimism that could possibly happen, and mentions that it's been done at other QZs. Didn't go so well in Kansas City though. But Ellie says Riley could come back and they could be the future. They could make things better and run things. Riley says that Ellie could be running things and that Riley says she turns 17 soon, which is when workers get their assignments in the QZ. Riley says Kwong gave her sewage detail and that she'll be standing guard while people shovel shit. That's what the QZ thinks of her. Riley says she doesn't know why she didn't tell Ellie, that she just panicked and ran. The longer she was away, the harder it was to come back. Ellie says she understands, and Riley says Ellie is the only thing she misses from that place. That reveal seems to make Ellie feel a little better. Riley then says it's time to go and that there are more wonders to behold. I'm going to pause here to talk about this wonder. What did you think?
I loved the intimacy of their conversation. I mean, they're talking about QZ stuff, but it seemed very intimate, like between these two friends that share an incredibly deep connection. We had a couple of longing looks, which was really nice, just to sort of like an added layer to convey exactly how Ellie was feeling about Riley. And all of that was just it was like teen, sapphic uh, wonder, on the carousel. The carousel was gorgeous. I mean, they did a good job of, once again doing like the majesty in like this decrepit mall with this, I mean, it wasn't like an overgrown with like vegetation type of carousel, but, clearly it's an old carousel. And there was like just this like marvelous beauty in, you know, this like lost world basically hidden, this little gem hidden in the rundown apocalypse. When the carousel stopped, I was worried because I knew shit was going to hit the fan. And so I was like waiting for shit to hit the fan. Like I felt like we were going to take a turn into a very, deeper and darker storyline, but it didn't. And that was good, I guess. We needed these beautiful moments first before shit hit the fan.
Is it weird that I'm triggered by carousels now, especially considering like I watched Punisher recently and I was playing Silent Hill 3, so a part of me is like, "Oh my God, carousels. Is are the zombies going to come out like at some point, the fungi, like whatever the hell you want to call them, the walkers, I don't know. But like are they going to come out and take over like cuz again, you heard Take On Me being played instrumentally and I was like, shit, this means trouble's gonna come down. But I like the fact that they're playing with viewers like expectations because like you expect bad things to happen from such a beautiful moment, but sometimes you just gotta bask and let the beautiful moment happen. And the fact that like they can be kids, they can smile at each other, they can like flirt and like pass around alcohol and just be like youthful for a second is like magical in and of itself, and you get to enjoy that. You get to enjoy like what you said, that the little hidden piece of paradise. And I'm gonna say something that like might be a little bit like controversial, but the part where she's like, yeah, you could run like the QZ, and made me think like this is like some sort of race thing too, because like Ellie is like a young white girl versus Riley being like an older black girl. And of course like they give her the shit detail because like they've given black people the shit detail all the time, and like she's not just like a normal like black child, like she's also like a troublemaker because she keeps getting like into fights. So like a part of me is like, shit, that's some fucked up shit. Like nobody wants to have the shit detail, and of course they would give it to like the troublemaking black girl, and that's not cool. But a part of me is like just kind of like they didn't actually say that. It's just what I'm implying through this. So maybe they didn't mean to say something like that, but and a part of me is like, well, and also like Kwong's Asian, so he's also a minority, so it probably wasn't that, but it's still something to think about. It's still a morsel to like chew over. And I as for the wonders, I really like I thought this was a beautiful moment. And so let's move on to the next one. Riley then takes Ellie to a working photo booth, and Riley supplies the $5 for their photos. Ellie asks if she's done this before, and Riley says she was waiting to do it with Ellie. Another reveal that, by the look on Ellie's face, is almost as good as the wonders. The duo makes goofy poses together while doing a scary pose. Riley stays cheek to cheek with Ellie for just a second too long. They look at the photos, and Riley gives Ellie the photos to keep. Before they get to their next wonder, Riley tells Ellie to listen. The revelation of what the next one is makes Ellie start running to Raja's arcade. With all the games going, the lights and the sounds, Ellie stands outside and says it's the most beautiful thing she's ever seen. Ellie looks in awe at the possibilities, but Ellie is upset that they won't be able to play any of them without coins. But Riley says she's already figured that out, opening the change machine that dumps out tokens. Riley says she spent an hour yesterday breaking it open for this moment. With coins in hand, Riley brings Ellie to the piece de resistance, Mortal Kombat 2, which Ellie pointed out in the gas station in Long Long Time. Unlike in Left Behind, where Ellie and Riley had to imagine playing the turning, a Mortal Kombat-like game, in the show, this pair can actually compete against each other in Mortal Kombat. Ellie selects Raiden, Riley chooses Melina. They smash buttons, but Riley wins and shows off Melina's fatality, in which she sucks up Raiden and spits out his bones. Riley replies that she's been here a few times, and Ellie jokes that Riley doesn't do everything without her. As they continue playing, we pan out of the arcade to find a lone infected in a nearby doll shop, and it's just woken up by the sounds of Riley and Ellie. So, what did you think of our Mortal Kombat moment?
Loved it. It was fantastic. I'm glad that we had this episode was payoff for a lot of the stuff that was set up earlier. You know, as you mentioned earlier, the fact that Ellie sort of referenced that she had had alcohol before. We did get a little bit of intel about Mortal Kombat, like how she knew that. We had earlier, a glimpse of like one of the pun books. We get a little bit of more of that in a moment. So this was a great episode for callbacks and for a better sort of like a better understanding of the context of why she knew what she knew. Mortal Kombat never looked better. Good grief, the old game graphics are fascinating to look at. But I mean, it was a badass game. The fatalities are spectacular, and then the infected. Now, because we saw him just briefly for a second, I was like, is he embedded in the wall like what we've seen before? It was like purposefully not that well lit to give like an air of mystery about what type of infected he was. But once I saw him, I was like, okay, shit's about to happen in a big way at some point very soon. And I'm ready for it, but I'm also not ready for it.
I completely agree. Like Mortal Kombat has never looked better. I loved the little like wink and a nod to what she said about like Melina's so cool. Of course it would be so cool. Like your best friend played her and kicked your ass with her. Of course it would be cool. And she got to see the fatality, which I'm like, how did you do that without like did you stay and play for a really long time and like get to the part in the game where like it explains fatalities to you? Because like you don't just button mash and come up with it like out of the blue. But I adored that again they bring it back to the whole like how would someone react to a modernity like a video game when you've never actually played before. And of course like she button mashes but she doesn't know how to use a joystick to move her character. So of course she gets her butt kicked like with a flawless victory. Like she's never played before. She doesn't know how to move. She doesn't know how to really button mash or how to make combinations. And I thought that was so charming. I loved it. And I props to the video game. Like it's nice that like Left Behind had them like pretending to play, but that would be really boring to see in a TV show. So I really appreciate that they put Mortal Kombat in there. Besides it's something to empathize with. If you've ever played Mortal Kombat, you remember those like video game machines. And you can totally tell that this is in the past because they used 1/4 each to play, where like now would be like $1.50 to play or something like that. So yeah. And I loved the photo booth moment. Oh my God, that moment when they were cheek to cheek or where they're like, okay, let's do back to back and let's do scary. Like, oh, that was such like a little kid, like with your best friend sort of like moment apart from the scene where like they're cheek to cheek and like Ellie's just there for like a little bit too long. Like I again another hint to like this means more to Ellie than you think it means. So like I loved it. I thought it was so charming. I loved the hint to the past. This was great. So after a few more games, Ellie is finally won playing as Baraka, and she pulls off her own fatality. As they celebrate the brutal move, they once again get a little too close and break off the moment. Ellie points out that it's getting late, but Riley says they've still got a few hours. Ellie says she doesn't want to get in trouble again, but Ellie will still be around tomorrow. Riley replies that she got Ellie a gift. This seems to be enough to get Ellie to keep going through the mall. They make their way to the food court and they jump the counter at the taco restaurant. In the back, Ellie sees Riley's stuff there and Riley says this is where mostly she's been staying. Riley then pulls out a gift. No pun intended, volume 2. The pun book Ellie will later read to Joel on their journey. Ellie is once again shocked, and the two read off the terrible jokes, giggling to each other. As Riley takes her turn, Ellie looks around and sees that Riley is keeping a whole stash of grenades. Riley admits she makes them, and Ellie asks if she used them to blow up soldiers. Then Ellie puts it together. Riley didn't find this mall. She was posted here by the Fireflies. Ellie leaves, saying none of this was about her, saying fuck you to her best friend. Riley runs after her and tells Ellie she's leaving. They're sending her to a post in the Atlanta QZ. Riley asks if Ellie could join so they could go together, but Marlene, the lady that recruited Riley, says Ellie couldn't go. Riley reveals that tonight is her last night in Boston. Ellie takes it all in, walks closer to Riley, and asks why she brought her here. Riley says it's because she wanted to see her. Ellie replies, and? To which Riley says she just wanted to say goodbye. Riley says this isn't easy, but Ellie states that it is, that she just did it. Ellie says goodbye and walks off, heading through the mall by herself. So we got this dramatic moment after a moment of levity. I want to know what your thoughts are.
This was really intense, but all of it was incredibly vital information. Like I thought all of it was really interesting. What's also interesting is the fact that the Fireflies did not do a good job of cleaning out the mall because, one infected, we saw at least one was still there. And so that was a little bit surprising to me. I was like, Fireflies, y'all are falling asleep at the job. But the information that Riley gave, that was so, like, it was fascinating. Like, I was, like, hanging on to every word that she was saying because this is, like, the most amount of information that we've gotten about sort of, like, the dynamic and the hierarchy and, the machinations of, like, how this well-oiled machine that is the Fireflies sort of works. So that was really important for us to hear, and I enjoyed that part. Clearly, we were getting closer and closer to some sort of revelation between the friends. We didn't get it, and I was like, oh no, like, Ellie can't leave because first of all, she's got to get bit, and second of all, like, we need a payoff to everything that's been building up that night. And certainly, this magical night at the mall was not going to end with Ellie storming off from Riley. Like, we needed a better conclusion. So, I will say this. I paused and I was like, okay, we still got some time left. Like, this isn't where it's ending. And so I was glad with that because, I mean, this would have been a really sad way to end the episode.
I was like exactly like you. I was thinking like, shit, we're having a happy moment. She got the joke book. She finally did her own fatality, which I will say is kind of like, how do I put this? It's kismet that she chose Baraka because Baraka is supposed to be like the romantic coupling to Melina. So the fact that she won with and played a fatality with Baraka when she's Melina like was just cherry on top of the lesbian sundae. Like I love it. Like I also loved the fact that they brought up no pun intended volume 2 that Riley gave it to her. That's why like that's the pun book that Ellie like whips out to read to Joel. Like and that Riley was important enough to know that no pun intended the first volume is precious to Ellie and it's shared between precious people, between Riley and Ellie, and now between Ellie and Joel. Like it shows the importance. And oh god, the fact that they were that joke where they brought up computers and they're like, "What's a computer? Like, what's this? What?" And they're like, "I don't know," and they just skip to another joke. That was adorable. I loved the jokes. Of course they're not gonna get things like that, but they're just gonna laugh about it anyway because it's in the moment and it's with your best friend. And I love a part of me was all dumb because like I should have thought that it was a joke book, but when she came to the taco stand, I'm like, did you find cheese that's still good? Are you gonna give her nachos? Like that's the first thought that came in my head. It wasn't tacos. So oh god, I loved that moment. I thought it was so good. And to have that crushed by Riley saying it's my last night in the QZ that I'm gonna be like leaving, I completely forgot about the hidden horror that is the fungi guy creeping up on them at some point. Like I just thought, God, Riley's leaving you. And of course, like nobody wants to have the shit shoveling job. So, and if you can pretend to be a hero and pretend to like circumvent tragedies that you feel that Fedra's doing to the QZ and become like a true leader like in the Fireflies, of course you're going to take that route. So I sympathized with Riley, but I also sympathized with Ellie who's losing her best friend again after thinking that she was dead. to something that she feels like is stupid. She doesn't believe in the Fireflies. She doesn't believe in a happy ending for everybody. She just believes that like you get the detail that you get and you just got to work through it. So I can see where both of them are coming from and there's no winners here. Like God, I that whole thing where she's like Ellie like says you just did and just walks off. Like such pathos, such teenage angst. I love it. It's great. So Ellie almost gets to the way they came back, but stops herself and heads back. She hears screaming, and Ellie starts running toward it. But she finds out that the screams were coming from the Halloween store. Inside, she also finds Riley, who says, "Surprise, the fifth wonder." Ellie says she thought Ellie would like this best, so she saved it for last. Ellie, still upset, asks Riley for the book back and sits next to her friend. Ellie explains her feelings. She thought Riley was dead, but then comes back, gives her this amazing fucking night, and now she's leaving again, forever, to join a cause that Ellie doesn't even think Riley understands. Riley says Ellie doesn't know everything, that she doesn't know what it was like to have a family and to belong, and Riley wants that again. The Fireflies might not be what she thinks, but they chose Riley, and she matters to them. But Ellie says Riley mattered to her first, saying that she wants to punch Riley so bad. Riley says she's sure about leaving, and Ellie accepts it. Ellie says Riley is her best friend and she'll miss her. Riley says the night isn't over yet, that Riley has one more thing. Riley throws a wolf mask to Ellie and reveals that she stole Ellie's Walkman, to which she says that she probably is going to give it back. Riley hooks the Walkman up to a speaker as Etta James's cover of I Got You Babe plays. Riley puts on the clown mask and Ellie wears the wolf mask, and they both get on the store's counter and start dancing together. But Ellie starts to slow down, takes off her mask. Riley also takes off her mask, and Ellie begs Riley not to go, and Riley agrees. Ellie kisses Riley, and then Ellie immediately says, "I'm sorry," but Riley says, "For what?" The two smile and laugh, happy that they still have each other. Ellie asks what they do now, and Riley says they'll figure it out. So I'm going to pause at this happy moment and ask, what did you think?
It was the moment we've all been waiting for. We saw the signs. We were waiting for some magic to happen in the mall on this magical night, and it did. Now, before we get to there, the reunion was really cute. Although I will say this, I was a little worried for Riley when we heard the screams. I was like, oh shit, is this where we're finally getting the moment? And it wasn't. It was another false alarm. And we have this wonderful not tender, but we have this wonderful fun moment in the Halloween shop. And seeing them dance, shout out to Etta James, and all of that was adorable. And then clearly this was going to lead to a big moment for both of them. And then we got the kiss. And the kiss was spectacular. Clearly Ellie is, dealing with, sort of a burgeoning sexuality. And this was her, I would assume, her very first kiss. She's also living in a time when, we really don't know how sexuality works in the post-apocalypse, because we have to kind of remember, this is where, okay, what am I trying to say? How am I trying to say it? This is where we don't really understand how the lines get blurred from real life and TV life. Because if you think about it, the apocalypse happens in 2003. The virus occurs, wipes out a majority of the population. There are survivors and that sort of thing. So are we dealing with people from our real life's 2003 mentality on sexuality? Are we dealing with a more idealized world, and how they dealt with sexuality? We don't really know that. So, are we sort of imprinting what we know about our world versus what we know about their world on the TV screen? I don't know. I really don't have the answer to this, so I can't say what it's supposed to be. But the fact that she was apologetic was interesting. The fact that Riley was like, you don't have to apologize, because that clearly means the feelings that she feels for Ellie is, incredibly, she's receptive to how she feels and she reciprocates it. So all of that was, it was nice. It was like a 90s romantic teen movie moment. Or even, we can throw it back to like an 80s John Hughes type of teen romantic moment without some of like the cringy, 80s sensibilities and norms, you know, that kind of stuff. But I mean, it was really well done. It was adorable. If you listen to the words of like "I got you, babe," at one point, it's like a line of like I can't remember what the exact line is, but I know a clown is referenced, and Riley's wearing a clown mask, and they're both like "I got you, babe." I mean, it was cute. It was adorable. It was a really sweet moment that we got to see clearly before shit was gonna hit the fan.
I hate you because you totally brought up the clown lyric, and I was like, of course they're gonna bring that up during the "I got you, babe" moment. Like, and when I'm sad, you're a clown. Like, and she's wearing the clown mask. Like, that was such like kismet. I loved that little like hint as to what's gonna come up next. And oh god, like I feel this show is trying its best to show like a more idealized version of how like people would react to like LGBT people with like with I don't know, like Nick Offerman finding like his somebody in episode 3, like in the midst of tragedy, and Ellie finding Riley like at this moment. Like, of course, like it's a very like I don't feel like it's a bury your gays moment, like, but I feel like it's uh LGBT people exist everywhere, even in like the apocalypse. They're still there. People are still being born like with this, and you just have to accept it. And I loved the fact that Riley and Ellie just like it could have been really ugly with her being like I'm sorry and her being like what's wrong with you like like it could have been a total like 80s moment where we see this as like a learnable thing, but no, it was just a sweet romantic moment with her being like for what. And I don't know, like I just flash back to them taking pictures together in the photo booth and just being like wow, this is like a total like an end to the circle. Please let it end there. And of course it's not going to, because tragedy has to happen to good shit all the time. We can't have good shit happen without bad shit happening like the next moment. This is not the CW where good shit happens to people. Like no, this is HBO. Your most beloved people are gonna die. So I felt bad. And I didn't like maybe it's just me, but just going back, the scream when Ellie like runs and she's like, Riley, what's wrong? Like I automatically thought Halloween store. I didn't, because the screen is one of those can screams that like little like animatronics in Halloween play. So I knew it wasn't Riley. So a part of me like when I heard the scream started hoping that they would like sort things out with each other. That they wouldn't like that she would show her something in the Halloween store that would put this all together. And just the dance that they had was such like it's from a generation that didn't learn like Jenna Ortega's dance from Wednesday and TikTok themed to Lady Gaga. It comes from a generation where like it's just awkward dancing because you never learned like how to do anything. So it's like 50s moves and like 80s slides. And like it's so cute. For lack of better words, it's just cute. And I don't know, like I'm hoping to see this like mixed up in like fan made music videos like afterwards, because it was adorable. I loved it. So We've had the good stuff. Now let's get to the bad. They hear a noise and Riley puts out her gun as an infected comes after them. When they both run through the Halloween store, the infected knocks them both down. With Riley out, Ellie stabs the infected in the side as she tries to fight him off. The infected gets on top of her, but then Riley hits it with a baseball bat. As it fights with Riley, Ellie grabs her switchblade and stabs it in the head, taking it out for good. Ellie is overtaken by the excitement the moment caused, but Ellie doesn't realize she's been bitten. Ellie almost tries to rub off the bite mark as she screams, "No!" But even worse, Riley reveals she's been bitten on the hand. They're both doomed. We cut back to Joel shivering in the basement, back to the moment when Ellie seemingly left. But it turns out she went upstairs, desperate to find something to help Joel. Back at the mall, Ellie destroys the Halloween store out of anger and frustration. Ellie settles down and sits next to Riley, who says the way that she sees it, they have two options. They take the easy way out and shoot themselves, but Riley doesn't like option one. And option two is they keep going. They don't quit, they keep going. Whether it's 2 minutes or 2 days, they can spend that time together. Riley doesn't want to give that up. They can just be all poetic and shit and lose their minds together. Ellie asks what option 3 is, and Riley apologizes as the two sit together and cry. Back in the present day, Ellie looks through the house and finds a needle and some thread in a drawer. She runs back down to Joel and holds his hand. She couldn't save Riley, she couldn't save Sam, but she can save Joel. She looks at the wound and begins to sew it shut as Joel looks away in pain. She's found the family that Riley was talking about, and now she'll fight to save him. So, midst of tragedy, bad shit happening. What did you think?
Oh yes, bad shit happening. The moment with the infected was really well done. It was just the right amount of chaos for me to be worried about both of them. And then once he was taken down, which I will say excellent move by Ellie, and then clearly we knew that Ellie was going to be bitten because this is the big moment for her. You know, this is when she was going to get bitten and she was going to realize that she's immune. She was going to connect with the fireflies, or they were going to kidnap her and that sort of thing. And it just made sense to me that Riley was going to have to die. And in my mind, Riley was going to die with Ellie defending her from like an infected. At least that's what I thought was going to happen. So the fact that she survived but was bitten, and so in essence she had to die, made sense to me. What I hoped, and I said this earlier, but I'm going to say it now because this is the more appropriate time to say it, is what I had hoped that we were going to see is just a couple of scenes with the fireflies discovering Ellie and filling in the blanks of like how she connected with the fireflies. Like, was she kidnapped? I mean, she was chained up at the start of the season, so I would assume she was taken against her will. And I don't feel like we've really gotten an exposition-y type of explanation of exactly what happened and how they deduced that she was immune outside of the testing and that sort of thing. So, I don't know. For me, the episode would have felt just a little bit like a hair more complete with some sort of firefly connection. Clearly, if she Riley was assigned as like that was like her base camp or her post, you know, someone was going to check in on her, or if she doesn't check in with the rest of them, some of them would go to her. So we can kind of deduce in our head what potentially happened, but I would have loved a little bit more of like a concrete, official show explanation of what happened. Once again, I know it's like a nitpick, but it's something that I would have loved to have seen in this episode because I feel like we won't get to see anything like that in a future episode. We're just going to be lucky if we get a tiny bit of exposition explaining it. Then the catch up to the present day, the way that they did it was interesting because, you know, we kind of end things in the flashback and we catch up to the present day and we see Ellie's decision and then we flash back again. And then we come back to the present. That was a stylistic choice. I don't know if I liked it per se, but it was a stylistic choice. Now, Ellie finding something to help. I mean, clearly that's where I hoped they were going with it. I really don't understand how sewing up the wound helps. Like, I'm not a surgeon. Um, he's got a big hole, in his abdomen. So, I mean, I understand you do have to seal up the hole, but it's like, I don't know if that's all that she needed to do. Like, doesn't he need antibiotics or
Well, what's gonna kill you first isn't the
the
infection,
bleeding out, right?
it's the bleeding out. So she's like one step at a time. Like if I can stop the bleeding out, maybe he can heal enough that he can walk to a town or to
But
the
doesn't
university that they're going to.
well, we don't really know the extent of his injuries, and clearly, unless you are a doctor with like a lab or something, X-rays and that sort of thing, probably no one would know the extent of his injuries. But like, even if she sewed him up, like internal bleeding is a thing, right? Like even in the year 2023 in the post-apocalypse. So I understand the thought process that you want to stop the bleeding, and so you're going to sew him up. But I was still worried for Joel, even though I feel like this is this is like a point in which Joel is being saved. So I understand that, but I was worried for the man.
I think, and I'm gonna say this like oversimplifying it because of course like it's gut wounds, and anytime you're in the ER, like a gut wound is always gonna like freak you out because you can puncture an intestine and have like fecal matter like ruin like everything, and just like you'll die of toxicity. Like, but there are also a ton of cases where like you have like bullet wounds or shivs going through someone and they don't nick anything. Like it's just going through like muscle and fat and just tearing and not like and just causing like outward bleeding but not causing like inward bleeding. Like the body is a mysterious thing. Like you can survive a lot of like bullshit sometimes by just like patching you up, by stapling you up together. So I can suspend my disbelief enough to think that if she just like stitches him up, maybe we can get somewhere. Like, but then again, I'm the type of person that like plays Resident Evil and like suspends my disbelief at the fact that like Leon gets bit a lot in Resident Evil 4 and he's fine with just like a couple of like red and green herbs put together. Like it's a video game. Like logic isn't really gonna apply here with your protagonists. But yeah, I, unlike you, loved the mashup of Riley and Ellie like dealing with the tragedy of being bit at the same time that Joel is like dealing with his wound, and like Ellie is like trying to find something to help Joel with. Like it's the whole like Ellie wants to scream at that moment. Like she's so frustrated with how to help who she sees as family now, like Joel, like the one person that's like stood by her side through everything, like what we've seen in the last episode. And to get that catharsis in the past with Ellie literally screaming and breaking like things, like it was just like it just shows like inward dynamic, outward dynamic. Like it's beautiful. I loved that together. I thought it like mashed up really well. And when like I'm just gonna say the choreography with the fighting of the infected and Riley and Ellie like using what they had, whether it was like a little like knife to stab through the sides, then stab in the head, or a baseball bat or a gun, like it was just done so well. It just looked so gritty and raw. Like I love it. And I know that they probably didn't get to use like the girls themselves because you can't hurt your main actresses. They probably use stunt doubles. And to have them like bust through like a store display and like crawl, like it looked so real, so gritty, so like flawed, and I loved that. I thought it was done remarkably well. And Ellie rubbing the bite mark is something that I was like, shit. This ain't no etch a sketch like that. This isn't something that can be like erased. So I felt so bad for her. Her little, like, her scream after Riley just, like, shows off her hand and she's like, no, like, my heart made that sound. Like, I didn't know what was going to happen since I've never played this part, but a part of me suspected, like, hoped beyond hope that Riley, like, left to tell the Fireflies that Ellie got bit because she was scared, and she jonesed off to go, like, to the Arizona QZ and left, like, Ellie to deal with the Fireflies. Like, a part of me hoped, because that would mean at least, like, even if she was a dick, that meant that she was alive. That meant that this moment, like, happened. But we didn't get that, obviously. They both are going to have their Romeo and Juliet moment where they die in each other's arms. Like, and obviously, like, that's what Riley thinks is going to happen. But even more tragically, if you think about it, Ellie had to see the person she loved slowly lose her mind while she was fine, while she could do nothing to help. It's another Sam moment all over again. And I feel like it's even more powerful that we didn't get the whole, like, Fireflies rushing in to see what's going on, what's all this noise, and to rehash what we saw in the first episode. Like, instead, it's left unsaid. Like, Riley just tells her what the options are and says sorry for option 3 because there is no option 3. Like, it's more powerful with it left dangling in the air. I thought this was a beautiful moment, and I just like, I finished the episode and, like, a sigh left me because I felt like so much shit happened and I was just, like, feeling it all. Like, I paused this episode so many times because usually, like, when I watch an episode and it gets to be too much, like, emotionally, I'm like, oh my god, something's too cute, I can't handle it. Like, I pause and reflect and then I go back to it and, like, let the moment happen. And this happened so many times this episode for me. Like, it felt like I went through a workout watching this episode, like, emotionally. I was like, someone needed to squeegee me out of all the emotions that, like, ran through me. It was crazy. I loved this. So, with that being said, now it's time for the MVP, the most valuable player. State which character impressed you throughout the episode and why. Once a character has been chosen, they cannot be selected again, so choose wisely. And luckily, we don't have Vinny here, so we don't have to fight very much over who our top billings are. So I'll let Jeffrey go first. And who do you pick as your MVP?
Well, we did have the fungi guy, so, there were 3 people in this. Well, I mean, also, you could justify Joel, maybe, if we had 3. But fortunately, there are only 2 of us because this really was a showcase for 2 actors. And I feel like whomever I choose, like the other one, you're going to be able to rep perfectly, I feel. So I am going to choose Ellie. And I'm going to choose Ellie because she was just so good in this episode. Like, Bella Ramsey knocked it out the park. She was just fantastic throughout this entire hour of television. In the past, we got to unlock, a chapter in Ellie's life that we did not know about. We got to see her run through the gamut of emotions throughout this episode, from, not having her best friend to getting her best friend back to having the best moment, the best time of her life, to then getting a little bit heartbroken by finding out that her best friend was going to be leaving. All throughout, she was still dealing with complex emotions inside of how she actually felt about this person, and then finally acting out upon them, acting out upon, these feelings that she had, it being reciprocated, and then tragedy strikes, and Bella Ramsey just knocked it out the park in all of the flashback section. And then we have her, now we know exactly what she's gone through. Now there's a little bit of a greater context to what she said in the previous episode to Joel, that everybody that I've ever had has left, and we can now interpret the word left to mean died. Because, I mean, if you think about it, everyone that she has come into close contact with, that she has, bonded with, has died. And so now Joel is her person. It makes her her intensity in the present day of trying to find something to help Joel, just it makes it a very life or death type of situation for her, because she sees this as a life or death situation for Joel. So all of it made sense, and Bella Ramsey just knocked it out the park. So props to her. So that's why Ellie is my MVP.
And thank God you picked her, because I was totally gunning for Riley. I've never seen Storm Reid again in anything. So this is my first foray into Storm Reid's acting. And I thought she again, POC's doing the damn thing and making you love them in one episode and then dying right as soon as you grow to love them. God, she was so great. It's she pulled it's believable that she had a family once. It's believable that she has tragedy, that and that she protected Ellie and thought the world of her and would accept her kisses, would accept her love, and to have tragedy strike and to know that instead of leaving together to the QZ or leaving to Arizona together to be fireflies, they were going to be together, they were going to have it all, and then it just shit fucked up because it's the apocalypse and you can't have nice things in the apocalypse. And I'm just, God, it broke my heart, and Storm Reid did a really good job. I'm amazed. She's epic. I loved her. So with that being said, now it's time to rate the episode. How would you rate this episode on a scale of 1 to 10 infected? The point system is allowed. If you found the episode exceptional, deserving of more than 10, you may grant it the coveted golden infected. And Jeffrey, I'll allow you to go first.
It's funny because after I watched the episode, I was like, okay, I'm probably going to rate this like a 9 or a 10. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. The acting was top notch. And, this was like a nice little pocket into the life of Ellie before, we met her at, or I should say way back in the first episode. But after talking about it with you, I have an even more, an even greater appreciation for the episode, and I don't want to do it again, but I think I'm going to give it a golden, because pretty much because of the two leads, Bella Ramsey and Storm Reid. They sold it for me. This was a magical, romantical adventure that ended in tragedy, a tragedy that we knew was coming, but a tragedy nonetheless. And the bookends to the present day were really well done as well. So yeah, I'm surprising myself because this is not where I thought I was gonna go when I rated the episode, but I will give it a golden.
I am getting on that golden train. It's a choo-choo motherfucker for me. It's totally a golden. I loved this. Again, take the whole, kill your gays thing, with a grain of salt, because this is the apocalypse. Of course, they're going to kill off everyone. But, I liked the fact that they brought these two together and, showed such, gooey moments with each other where, if you're headed in the clouds, you're oh no, these are just two friends being friendly to one another. But if you're really looking at the details, you're these girls are flirting. And ended in tragedy with both of them choosing to run away together and then not being able to because of circumstances beyond their control. And to bookend that with her trying to save the only person in her life who gives a shit about her, and like searching through like cabinets, searching through drawers, trying to find anything to save him. Like, God, that's so powerful. And there's even like even the minor characters, like the general who's in charge of the orphanarium for both of them, and like, or the mean white girl. Like, it's just, they both show like you can think about it like multi levels. Like, is this guy like a Feder goon? Is he just like spouting off things to make this girl fall into line, or does he really actually give a shit about her? Is he really like, does he really believe in Feder for the QZ? Like, are they completely bad? Are they completely good? Like, and I think the biggest answer comes to the fact that like nobody is completely bad or completely good. You can think of the fact that Riley is a beautiful girl who's in love with Ellie, and you can also think, well, she's creating like bombs, which Ellie's right, are gonna hurt people. And as much as Riley says no, that it's like that it's not like that. Like, again, Ellie's got a point where it's propaganda that the Fireflies give, that nobody in the apocalypse is truly innocent. So I just love how complicated the dynamics can be, and how wonderful like the humanity within like these moments of beauty, like of the carousel, are foiled with the tragedy of the fight at the Halloween store. Like, it's just, it's beautiful. I loved how complicated everything can get, how layered. Like, if I wanted an easy like TV show, like I'd watch a PBS special or something like that. Like, it's nothing like that. It's beautiful. I'm just amazed, and of course I'm giving it a golden. I thought this was really, really good television. And that's that it's a flashback episode, like and a bottle episode at that, sort of, with like her just hanging out at a mall. Like, it could have been really boring, but it wasn't. Like, it was, man, the gays are doing the damn thing. Like, it's exceptional. I loved it. So with that being said, join us next time for a brand new installment of the Cordyceps Chronicles. Here's our announcer to remind you on how you can interact with us.
Follow Poppy Chula Radio on social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at Poppy Chula Radio. Do you have any questions, suggestions, comments, or concerns? Email us via contact@poppychularadio.com. Are you interested in joining the Poppy Chula Radio team as an on-air personality? Email talent@poppychularadio.com. Binge listen to your favorite Poppy Chula Radio programs by visiting poppychularadio.com/archives. You can also download tonight's broadcast and the rest of the series through Apple Podcasts and Google Play. Just search for The Cordyceps Chronicles and subscribe.
Thanks, announcer. My co-host, meaning Jeffrey, because Vinny's not here, please wish the listeners a good night.
Have a good night, listeners. Stay safe out there.
Thanks for tuning in. Subscribe to the Cordyceps Chronicles via Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. New episodes release every Tuesday. You can also download the entire series by visiting poppychularadio.com/archives. Good night.